Grace was born in a small, worn-out neighborhood at the edge of the city where the lights of the rich never reached, and the nights always felt longer than they should. Her father worked in an old repair shop, and her mother stitched clothes for the neighbors to keep food on the table. Grace grew up watching her parents count every single dollar before buying bread. She learned very early that life gives you nothing if you don't fight for it. She dreamed of becoming something big, but the world around her kept whispering that dreams were only for those who could afford them. She was a quiet soul with eyes full of hope and hands that always wanted to create something. She would draw designs on old paper scraps, dreaming of opening her own store one day. When she was in college, she met Daniel, a boy who had charm in his words and ambition in his smile. He came from a middle-class family, but he spoke like someone who had already seen success. Grace trusted him more than she trusted herself, and for the first time, she thought maybe love could make poverty less painful. Daniel loved her too, or at least he believed he did. They planned a future together, talking about small apartments and big dreams. They wanted to build a simple but happy life, and well, everything felt possible. After graduation, they got married in a small church with only a few friends around. Daniel promised her a bright life. He said one day they would move into a real home, not just a rented room, and Grace believed every word. She stood beside him through every struggle. She would cook late at night after working 2 jobs, and she would still smile at him, as if her love could pay the bills. But slowly Daniel began to change. He started working with a company owned by a wealthy family, and that world of money and glamour pulled him away from his humble roots. He met Victoria, a woman born into luxury, beautiful, confident, used to getting everything she wanted. She liked Daniel's hunger for success, and Daniel liked the way she made him feel powerful. He started coming home late, making excuses, and Grace started sleeping next to silence. When Grace became pregnant, she thought the baby would bring them closer. She imagined Daniel holding their child, promising a better future. But instead, Daniel grew colder. He avoided her eyes. He began to wear new suits and use expensive perfumes that Grace never bought. She tried to ignore the signs. She prayed every night for him to remember the vows they made, but love is never enough. When someone falls in love with greed, the night Grace went into labor, Daniel was not there. He had told her he was on a business trip, but later she found out that he was marrying Victoria in a private ceremony while she was in the hospital giving birth alone to their son Ethan. She cried quietly, holding her baby boy, whispering that he was all she had left. The nurse looked at her with pity, but Grace didn't want pity. She wanted strength. She decided that moment she would never beg Daniel to come back. She would raise her son on her own, even if the world turned against her. She moved into a tiny apartment with peeling walls and broken lights. Every morning, she would leave Ethan with an old neighbor and go work in a cafe, serving coffee and cleaning tables. The money was never enough, but she never complained. She learned how to stretch a single meal for 2 days. She skipped her own lunch just so Ethan could drink milk. Years passed, and life kept testing her more. Ethan got sick often, the rent went up, and sometimes she had to choose between paying the bills or buying medicine. She cried at night quietly so her son wouldn't hear her, but she never stopped working. She started selling handmade crafts on weekends. She would stay up till 2 in the morning stitching small designs with tired hands. One day a customer asked her where she learned to 11:44 a.m., October 26, 2025, online work. After years of pain, Grace finally learned to live again. Her mornings began with the sound of birds outside her small balcony and the laughter of Ethan, who was growing into a kind and thoughtful boy. She would make him breakfast and then head to her small workshop where 10 women now worked with her, all of them single mothers who had been struggling just like she once did. She never forgot where she came from. She made sure her company hired people who needed a second chance. She would often say to them, "We are not just making clothes, we are stitching our broken dreams together." Ethan went to a public school, and though Grace could now afford better, she wanted him to grow with humility. She taught him that every dollar had a story behind it, and that success meant nothing if it wasn't shared with others. One day, he asked her mom, "Do you ever miss Dad?" And she smiled softly, saying, "Sometimes, but only the person I thought he was, not the man he became." Ethan nodded quietly, understanding more than his age allowed. Grace started traveling across cities, giving talks about her journey. She would stand before crowds of young women and tell them that darkness does not destroy you, it teaches you how to shine. She spoke not like a celebrity, but like a friend who had walked through the same fire. After every event, girls would come to her in tears saying they wanted to be like her, and she would reply, "Be better than me, build something that no one can take from you." Years later, Ethan got a scholarship for college. He wanted to study design, just like his mother Grace cried when she dropped him off at the university, because for the first time she realized that her fight had created a future not just for herself, but for him too. She went back to her empty home and sat on the couch where she had once cried over unpaid bills. She smiled this time because those tears had not gone to waste. Her company continued to grow, slowly turning into a national brand. One morning, she received a letter from the same bank that once refused her a small business loan. Now they wanted to feature her in a campaign for women entrepreneurs. She read it and laughed softly, remembering how that rejection once broke her heart. She accepted, not out of pride, but to show others that rejection is not an ending, it's only a delay in destiny. Daniel saw her face again on a billboard in the city. His hands trembled as he read her quote printed under her picture: "Success built on honesty lasts forever." He stood there silently, realizing that she had become everything he once wanted to be, but could never become because he took shortcuts. He tried calling her once more, but she never answered. He sent letters that went unread because some chapters are meant to remain closed. As the years went on, Grace started spending more time teaching young women how to build their own businesses. She started a small foundation named Light. Within it helped single mothers learn sewing, accounting, and self-confidence. She never asked for donations. She used her own money to fund it and said, "Every time I help one woman rise, I rise again too." She became a symbol of quiet power, someone who turned pain into purpose. Ethan graduated and joined her company, working beside her. He was tall, kind, and carried the same gentle smile as his mother. Together, they redesigned the brand to represent strength and simplicity. Their sales increased, but Grace never let greed enter her life. She still lived in the same modest house and still used the same coffee mug from her early days. Whenever reporters asked her why she didn't move into a mansion, she would say, "Because my peace fits in small spaces." One day, while walking through a charity event, she saw Victoria sitting alone at a corner, looking lost and older than her age. Grace paused for a moment, memories rushing back, but instead of anger, she felt only compassion. She walked over and said softly, "Are you all right?" Victoria looked up surprised. She said, "You of all people, you should hate me." Grace smiled gently. "I don't hate anyone anymore. Life has already punished both of us in its own ways." Victoria lowered her eyes, ashamed but relieved, because Grace's kindness was more powerful than any revenge. That night, Grace returned home feeling lighter than she had in years. She realized forgiveness isn't about others, it's about freeing yourself from the chains of the past. She stood by her window watching the city lights and whispered to herself, "Thank you for everything, the pain, the struggle, the loneliness, because without them, I would never have found myself." Years passed. Ethan married and had a daughter. He named her Hope in honor of what his mother had taught him. Grace became a grandmother with silver hair and tired hands, but her eyes still glowed with the same fire she had as a young girl. She would sit with Hope, telling her stories about hard work and love, and how strength often wears the face of a quiet woman. When she finally retired, she didn't throw a grand party. She simply gathered her team in the small workshop where it all began. She looked around and said, "Every stitch we ever made carried a prayer, and every tear we shed built something beautiful. This is not the end, it's just a new beginning for someone else." Then she handed over the keys of the business to Ethan and smiled with peace. That evening, she sat on her porch as the sun went down, the sky painted in orange and gold. Ethan came and sat beside her, saying, "Mom, you did it, you changed everything." And she replied softly, "No, son, I didn't change everything, I just refused to give up, and that was enough." As the night grew darker, Grace closed her eyes and listened to the sound of the wind. It reminded her of the nights she had cried alone and the mornings she had faced without hope. She smiled because now she knew that every pain, every loss, and every lonely night had led her exactly where she was meant to be.